What I'd like to share with you today is a story from the Qur'an, and before I do, just some introductory comments. A lot of stories in the Qur'an have to do with the children of Israel, many of them. And many of the prophets mentioned in the Qur'an are the prophets of the Israelites. But if you compare what's in the Bible and in Jewish literature about their history, and you compare it to what is in the Qur'an about their history, you'll see a huge difference. There's a lot less in the Qur'an. Allah chose in His final revelation to be very selective about which stories He's going to choose for His book. So there's very few stories in the Qur'an, and in fact, some of them aren't even found in Jewish literature, meaning Allah is telling us the lost chapters of Jewish history in the Qur'an. For example, the story of Musa and Khidr in Surah Al-Kahf is not found anywhere in Jewish literature. They don't have it. But it's a story about Musa alayhi salam, and one of the names of the Torah to the Jewish people is Torat Musa. It's the Torah of Musa, and yet one of the stories of Musa that's in the Qur'an is not even found in their tradition. And so the first observation, the thing I want you to think about, is that Allah gave us this book to guide humanity until Judgment Day, starting with guiding Muslims. When Muslims find Allah's guidance and live by it, it will make easier for the rest of humanity to find that guidance and live by it. So the first audience is us, and by extension, that becomes the rest of mankind. And for our guidance, Allah chose one of the key pieces, one of the key devices by which Allah chose to guide us is telling stories and selecting very, very special stories. So before I even start this story, I want you to just set your mind in a certain way. Why would Allah choose these very particular stories? Because these are the stories that are going to repeat themselves throughout the story of humanity. None of these stories are dead. All of these stories are alive. All of these stories replay themselves in newer and newer ways. So we have to look at the stories of the Qur'an not just as something that happened thousands of years ago. We have to look at it as something that might even be happening right now. This is the Qur'an's way of even doing contemporary commentary, a commentary on current affairs, a commentary on our reality. This is the mindset that if you remember nothing else about this lecture, I want you to remember that the next time you engage with a story in the Qur'an. Now I'm going to take you to a little bit of history. Where were the Israelites enslaved? Egypt, very good. And the Egyptians were a massive empire. They were a superpower. And they were in dominant power for thousands of years. They had a huge, huge dynasty and incredible architecture, and they were leading the world. In fact, they were the world's dominant power, and other royalties used to send their children to get their education in Egypt. So they used to get a student visa and go there to study, right? And their architecture was superior to everybody else. Their monuments were superior to everybody else. Their agriculture was superior to everybody else. They had this dominance and this feature in the world. In fact, they were so impressive that later empires, even after the Egyptian empire collapsed, later empires tried to copy the Egyptians or describe themselves as the new Egypt, right? They're the new Egyptian empire. So the Romans, even after they took over, and the Egyptian empire had long collapsed, they would take monuments from Egypt and take them to all different parts of the Roman Empire to say, we're the new Egypt. You'll see an Egyptian obelisk next to the Blue Mosque in Turkey for a reason. You'll see a pyramid on the dollar bill for a reason. These are symbols of power, and they acknowledge the superpower status of these people. Now, the Israelites, coming back to the Israelites, they were slaves. Now, let's talk about the religion of the Egyptians. It's thousands of years old. But one thing that was very important in their religion was the cow. They had many, many monuments and statues and carvings of golden cows. And they had multiple gods. They believed in many gods, and a couple of their gods, one of their gods was a bull, Apis. And another god, which is female, was a cow, Hathor. And Hathor was, they associated, the bull was associated with protection against the enemy. It was associated with power and might and stability. So the more they worship this cow, the more the empire becomes stable and is able to defeat its enemies. And the cow that was the female, the Hathor cow, its symbol was it gives us milk, it gives us the leather, it gives us the meat, it gives us the bones, it tills our soil, it's our mother. You know, Muslims call Allah, one of Allah's names is Ar-Raziq, the provider. For them, the Raziq was the cow. So they worshipped the cow and they revered the cow, and the reason they did it is they want to make sure it rains, they want to make sure they don't get disease, they want to make sure their children are born healthy. In fact, some historians even argue that whenever there's a pharaoh that's going to take over government, the way you can tell that he's legitimately the new king is he has to drink from the sacred cow. He has to have the divine cow's milk for him to be associated with that power. They even believe that the sun rises from the east and the west. A cow carries it from the sun and takes it to the east. It takes it to the west. That's what they believed about the cow. Now, I don't want to give you a lecture about the Egyptian religion, but I do want you to know something about it. The cow was a big deal. The cow was a very big deal. Now, the Israelites were enslaved under the Egyptians for many generations. So there are many generations of Israelites who were born and they don't know what it means to be free. They've never known it. Their father didn't know it, their grandfather didn't know it, their great-grandfather didn't know it. All they know to be is slaves of a master class race that treats them like animals. That's the best case scenario. Many times they treat them worse than animals, and they're used to living like that. That's how their life looks. And they've accepted that as their fate. For many, many generations, this has been going on. And in that environment, another side note that I want you to know is the Israelites are the children of Israel. And Israel, if you go back further up, these are the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam. These are the children of Abraham. Means this, what I'm trying to tell you is these are the Muslims. The Muslims are born of that time. From our perspective, those who believed in those prophets were the Muslims of that time. So we don't call them the Jews of that time. From our perspective, we call them the Muslims of that time. They're being born into slavery under a superpower, and their next generation doesn't even know what it means to be free. They're born under the choke of a superpower. And what happens to young men and women that are raised as a minority, as a degraded, inferior minority that is under the chokehold of a larger superpower? You start thinking to yourself, consciously or subconsciously, man, these people, they have better roads, they have cleaner houses, they have more beautiful clothes, they're so much smarter, look, they're so much healthier, they're so much stronger, they keep on winning and winning, everything about their life is beautiful. My God, they have it all. I mean, they're kuffar, but they're awesome. Look at their streets, look at their neighborhoods, look at their highway system, look at their technology, look at their agriculture, and look at where we live. Fine, we're the believers, but we're also losers. Yes, they are the kuffar, but they are, oh my God, look at them. So they develop this kind of a love-hate relationship with their master. We hate the master because he's enslaved us, but we also kind of love the master because they live the life, man. They live the life. This is the environment in which the Israelites spent many generations. Now, let's fast forward. Allah reveals the message to Musa alayhi salam. There's a conflict between Musa and Fir'aun, and eventually the Pharaoh drowns, and the Israelites are finally free. Yes? They're no longer living in slavery. After being enslaved for generations, now they get a taste of freedom. Now they have a taste of freedom. And in that time, many adventures happened. I'm going to highlight two of them if time permits. I have so many things to share with you about this story, but I'm trying to be as selective as I can because I respect two things. One, the time that I've been given. Two, your attention span. But I do want you to at least take two parts of this story with you that I'm going to just be selective about. Okay. So they're out in the desert. They're free now. And Allah says to Musa alayhi salam that Allah calls Musa alayhi salam to meet with him. So he's going to leave the Israelites behind and he's going to go meet with Allah on the mountain. And the mountain is not that far. The mountain of Tur is not that far. So he leaves them behind. He leaves his brother Harun and he goes to meet with Allah. But he shows up early. He shows up early. And Allah asks him, مَا أَعْجَلَكَ عَنْ قَوْمِكَ يَا Musa. Musa, why did you show up early? What rushed you away from your people? Why did you show up so early? And of course he says, لِتَرْضَى عَجِلْتُ إِلَيْكَ رَبِّي لِتَرْضَى. I rushed to you, my master, so you could be happy. Obviously, if you're going to please Allah, like we go to the masjid earlier for Jum'ah, it's more rewarding, isn't it? So he rushed to Allah to make him happy. I won't go into that part of the story. The part I want you to focus on with me is what Allah tells him. And what he tells Allah. He says, Hum ula'i ala athari. No, they're just a few steps behind me. They're just a few steps behind me. I want you to remember two meanings of that. When Allah said, why did you rush? He said, there's a few steps behind me. Number one, it means they're not that far away. If there's any trouble, I'll just run back down and I can get there in 20 minutes, no problem. That's one meaning. The other meaning is, look, they followed me through the water. They followed me and they fought their fear against the Pharaoh and they crossed this desert with me and they've seen so many miracles. I'm pretty sure they're going to respect my leadership if I'm just gone for 10 extra days. Nothing's going to go wrong. They're still on my footsteps. They're still, I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay. And Allah says, actually, Samiri, there's a fellow named Samiri, a foreign name actually. He has put them in trouble. He's confused them. He's created chaos among them. So now I'm going to take you to Samiri and what chaos was created. While Musa alayhi salam was gone, this fellow Samiri, basically what he does is he collects all of their gold. Whatever gold they had from all their savings, they collected and they ran off from Egypt. And somehow he collects all of it from them, melts it down, and turns it into the statue of a guess what? A golden baby cow. A golden cow. Which suggests a couple of things. One, it might suggest that they didn't have enough gold to build a cow, so they had to go with a baby cow. Right? So that might be one reason. Another reason might also be if you study the ancient Egyptian religion, they would take the baby calf, bring it into the temple, put gold on it, and then put it in a special area where nobody will bother it until it grows up because it's meant to be a godlike cow that was specially chosen. So he's like starting off with a baby cow. He's starting there. Now, this whole cow business, does it have anything to do with Islam or does it have to do with the Egyptian religion? This is the Egyptian religion for thousands of years. And these Israelites lived as slaves and psychologically occupied for many generations under the Egyptians, yes? So all of a sudden he builds them this cow and he makes openings in it so when the wind blows it makes a mooing sound. And all of a sudden you find that many Israelites are now worshiping this cow. When I first read this story, I was confused. How? How do you just, hey, look what I made. Oh my God. Like, why would they just all of a sudden fall into worship of this thing? It's not an alien phenomenon to them. They've seen this kind of thing before. Where have they seen it? In Egypt for generations. But they're Muslim. They're not pagans. They're not following the religion of Pharaoh. No, they're not following the religion of Pharaoh, but something happens in the conscience of believers and the conscience of minorities when they live under a powerful majority. You start thinking their roads are better, their clothes are better, their homes are better, their armies are better, their wealth is better, their religion and their philosophy and their way of life and everything they think important must also be what? Better. Which is why you can find Christmas trees in homes in Karachi. This is the reason. You start adopting, you say, oh, we hate them, they have all the power, they have all of this. But you know, they are better. They are, and you start taking some of those values and you start mixing them in with your religion. And you say to yourself, well, I mean, if they became a superpower, obviously they were doing something right. And if they keep praying to these cows to protect them and to nourish them, clearly they got protected and they got nourished. So it's not like they're all wrong. Fine, I'm Muslim, but I mean, I don't want to take my chances. It can't be, it's not like I'm leaving Islam. It's just a little bit, it's shirk with a lowercase s. Right? It's not that bad. So they tell themselves that this is okay. Anyway, so as they do this and they accept this cow for worship and all of that, Musa alayhi salam comes back and he's absolutely shocked, right? And the reason I wanted to share this story with you is two parts. One part of it is, why did Samiri do this? What got into him? Like what was his agenda? We need to understand Samiri because he's important enough that Allah named him in the Qur'an. Like that's a big deal. Most people don't get named. He got named. And the other side, I want you to understand what happened to the Israelites. Because again, these stories will live forever. Samiri. Let's start with Samiri. Musa alayhi salam comes back and asks him, after he's done yelling at them, he yells at his brother, he gets angry at his brother. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how did he deal with Samiri. Ma khatbuka ya Samiri? Hey, what's your deal, Samiri? What'd you do this for? Why did you do this? And he has the strangest answer. He said, قَبَضْتُ قَبْضَةً مِّنْ أَثَرِ الرَّسُولِ. He said something that I found very confusing. He said, I grabbed a handful of the footprint of the messenger. If I'm translating literally, I grabbed a handful of the footprint of the messenger. When I read that in the Qur'an, look, I'm an inquisitive person. I don't just say, oh, okay, and I move on. I say, what? Huh? What? Footprint, messenger? The messenger's all the way up. Did he follow Musa alayhi salam and grab some dust of his footprint? What's going on? Then you read the commentaries and you find many people commenting, many mufassirun commenting, that he somehow saw Jibreel alayhi salam on a horse. And the horse, everywhere the horse stepped, plants started sprouting. So he saw that the footsteps of the horse of Jibreel alayhi salam produces life. So he grabbed a little bit of the dust from under the hoof of the horse of Jibreel alayhi salam, and he put that onto the cow, and the cow came to life. Except none of that is in a hadith, none of that is authenticated by the Sahaba, none of that is found in the Qur'an. And according to Ibn Ashur rahimahullah, I'm very impressed with his work in his Tafseer at-Tahrir wa Tanweer, says this has no authenticity at all. Even goes against the text of the Qur'an. So then what does it mean that I grabbed a piece of the footprint of the messenger? I'd like to offer an alternative understanding. You remember I said the word athar. Musa alayhi salam was with Allah. Allah said, why did you come so quickly? He said, they're right behind my footsteps. Remember footsteps? Hum ula'i ala athari. And it meant two things. It meant footprint. What else did it mean? That they're closely following me. Samiri sees an opportunity. These people, their Islam is not that strong. They don't really understand the revelation, but they're culturally still very attached to the dominant culture of the Egyptians. I can create a religion, an alternative religion that I'm not going to say it's not Islam, I'm not going to say it's shirk, I'm not going to say it's the religion of the pharaohs, I'm still going to call it Islam, but I will create a cult within them that are still impressed with the old ways, and that way I will have a handful of the kind of impact and following that is meant for the messenger. They will take me as a lesser kind of messenger. They won't officially call me a messenger, but they're going to follow me cult-like anyway. And so there is Islam given to prophets like Musa alayhi salam, and then there are cults that people like Samiri run by taking the gold of the people and giving them something they want, giving them something pagan. Of course, that never happened in Islamic history, ever, especially not in South Asia. Especially. The kind of cults that we create, in which we identify certain people as so connected and so they have connection with the ghaib and they have these powers and all of this. None of this stuff was Islam. None of this stuff. And Allah warned us this will happen with the story of Samiri. But it goes a step further. Allah Azza wa Jal told us in the Qur'an that when Musa alayhi salam was on the mountain, when he was on the mountain, Allah told Musa alayhi salam, by the way, even among your believers, even among the Muslims, سَأَصْرِفُ عَنْ آيَاتِي الَّذِينَ يَتَكَبَّرُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. I'm going to turn away from my revelations those who are arrogant in the world, those who seek to be great themselves. What did Samiri want? He wanted a following. He wanted to make money off the people. He wanted to become the religious leader. He wanted to become the cult leader. He wanted power in the world. Allah says, people like that, I will turn them away from my ayat. And then all the others, why did they follow him? Here's another subtle point that I really, really want to make sure you remember. We have a concept of God in Islam. And the Egyptians had different gods, deities in their religion. And Hinduism has gods. Christianity has a concept of God. Judaism has a concept of God. What separates Islam's concept of God, especially from pagan religions? Especially like the religion of the Egyptians. The religion of the Egyptians, the way if you can understand this simply, it's transactional. I give the God something, he gives me something back. I sacrifice something for that God, He gives me freedom. I make sure I build a golden statue in His name, He protects the country, etc., etc. It's always a transaction. You give, we give and get, give and get, give and get. And so the Israelites are now, their concept of God itself, even though they believe in one God, has now been corrupted into a God that is transactional. So okay, we'll follow this God through the water, end up in the desert, but what kind of God is this? If He's really on our side, He should hook us up like the God of the Egyptians. He should send us rivers and vegetation and all of it. Why is He giving us this one cloud and just manna and salwa? Can you bring some salad over here? Like, fumiha wa adasiha wa bathaliha wa qithaiha wa fumiha wa adasiha. Where are the vegetables? Why isn't this God giving us a better menu option? Why? Because in their mind, their God became entirely transactional. But that's not from Islam, that's from the pagan religion. Of course, Muslims would never fall into such a trap, especially not in 2024. I made so much dua, I even prayed tahajjud, I even decided to pray 5 times, and I still failed my medical boards. Of course, we would never become transactional. I stopped praying because Allah doesn't answer my prayers on my terms. I wanted that job, I didn't get that job, and now I have to drive an Uber until I find another job. That's why I'm just disappointed with Allah, because I did my part, He didn't do His part. This was the pagan religion. This was not the religion of Islam. We started making our religion transactional. And what is the offering of those religions? They offer you the transaction. Make this offering, your child will be protected. Make this offering, it's going to rain. Make this offering, this is going to happen, that's all it is. It's all transactions. So we're done with Samiri. There are going to be Samiris in the world that are going to try to take believers away from the ayat of Allah, to pull them into cults, to keep them away from revelation. Allah described their tactic. Allah says, وَإِنْ يَرَوْا سَبِيلَ الرُّشْدِ لَا يَتَّبِعُونَ سَبِيلًا. If they see the right way, they're not going to follow it. And if they see the deviant way, they'll follow it immediately. Now let's take a step forward. Musa alayhi salam comes back, sees this nonsense, and tells Samiri what he's done, tells him off, and then in front of him, shows him that he's going to destroy that cow. He starts smashing it to bits. Now when he's smashing it to bits, if I'm one of the Israelites watching him do this, and I've been culturally enslaved for many generations, some part of me is like, is it going to thunderbolt right now? Is there going to be an earthquake? Because he's breaking oh my God, I can't watch. And then he's going to take it, break it, and he's going to drown it into what? The river. Interestingly, the same river that who drowned in? Fir'aun has already drowned, yes? It's as if Fir'aun drowned, but the poison Fir'aun put in these people still hadn't drowned. That also needs to drown. That's Samiri, fine. What about the other side? The other side is the people who followed him, the people who believed him. They still, even if the idol is broken on the outside, that doesn't necessarily mean the idol inside has broken. They still possibly believe it. So Allah reveals this interesting test to them that I had my beloved friend Ibrahim recite. Allah commands you to slaughter a cow. He tells the Israelites, you need to slaughter what? All of you are going to slaughter a cow. Now, okay, Samiri will face the curse of the cow that he wrecked. But now all of you better slaughter your cow. What is that going to prove? You no longer have any special connection with the cow. The idol worship that is inside you, hiding somewhere, needs to be broken. The cultural colonization that you're still living under needs to be broken. It needs to be slaughtered. And when they first heard this, they were in shock. By the way, when Samiri asked them to worship a cow, did they do it immediately? Yeah. But when Musa asked them to slaughter a cow, did they do it immediately? No, they said, what are you kidding? أَتَتَّخِذُنَا هُزُوًا? You think we're a joke? Are you taking us for a joke? They got offended. They got shocked. What did Allah tell Musa on the mountain while they were doing this? Allah said to him, if they were to be called to the right way, they won't follow it. And if they see the wrong way, they will follow it. So what is going to happen to these people that get away from the revelation? When they see something crooked, easily followed. When they see the right way, they start asking a lot of questions. It's so complicated. I'm not sure. I have a lot of questions about salah. Where are you supposed to put your hands? I don't know where to put my hands. How far apart should your feet be? It's so hard, it's so difficult. But the Christmas tree is really easy. The wrong thing's super easy, but the right thing, I got a lot of questions. What kind of cow? I'm confused, what kind of cow? And what did Allah do? Allah said, a cow that's never been bothered. It's not too young and not too old. Which, by the way, not too young and not too old, perfect age, that would be the sacred cow in Egypt, isn't it? And then they said, oh, okay, yeah, fine, but color. And what color did Allah say? What color? Anybody know? Yellow, golden. Because you're meant to slaughter the gold. The more they're asking because they don't want to do it. And the more they're asking, the answer is taking them more directly to the one thing they don't want to do. It's taking them right back in that direction. And then he says, La shiyat, the last time they asked, okay, fine, we're confused. Can you just tell us more about this cow? Oh, it's a cow that's never been put to work. It's been left alone. It doesn't have a single blemish or a tarnish. Guess what? The sacred cows of Egypt, did they put them to work in the farm? No, they kept them in special areas and gave them luxury life. Right? It would be ironic if they gave them leather sofas. That would be kind of funny. But anyway. But the idea is, Allah is now describing the cows of Egypt by the story. And what's the most amazing part of this at the end is, Allah says, فَذَبَحُوهَا, they finally did slaughter it. But then Allah says, وَمَا كَادُوا يَفْعَلُونَ, and they almost didn't do it. Listen to that. They almost didn't do it. Why would Allah say that? Allah is telling us that for generations to come, whenever believers are going to be colonized, whenever believers are going to be dominated, and there's such a thing as political domination, military domination, economic domination, but there's also such a thing as a cultural domination, a psychological domination, a spiritual domination. And when you live subjugated for so long, you start developing an inferiority complex. And the people, white people are just smarter. What are you going to do? Starts coming inside your head. They're just better. When you're at school, you're being made fun of. You're less and less and less. And something in you says, if I act more like them, I'll be more acceptable. If I dress more like them, I'll be more acceptable. If I look more like them, behave more like them. If I change my name to sound more like their name, they won't ever accept me, but at least I'll feel like I'm closer to the winning team. The pharaohs will never accept the Israelites as equals. But the Israelites are still enamored with their religion, isn't it? Your inferiority complex can get so strong that you're almost worshiping this culture and you've mixed it in with your religion. You're not willing to say that I've left my religion. No, I have my religion, but really I have a lot of affinity for all of this Firaun cow that lives inside me. So the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is that there will always be, within the Muslim world, there will always be Samiris. Always. And there will always be Muslims who are going to be susceptible to having reverence for their own version of the cow. There's going to be something cultural, something economic, something in our practices. And we're going to have to take a deep look within ourselves. Where does our sense of pride, sense of value, sense of purpose, where does it come from? Where did we adopt these values from? Why are we so committed to being this way or that way? When you have a young child in school and they are trying to copy all of their other friends and they're yelling and screaming at home because they don't have a device that all their other friends got for their birthday or whatever else, they're having a tantrum. What are we already preparing these kids for? The worship of the new cows of this generation. That's what we're preparing them for. Instead of being able to think for themselves and free themselves from it. Allah gave us these stories because these problems will never die. And we have to be aware of these problems so we can be mindful of them. This is the last bit of my message that I want to share with you tonight. This story occurs in Surah Al-Baqarah, towards the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. And the latter half of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah told us that He made us a balanced nation. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. That's what He told us. Why is Allah talking about the Israelites first? You know what an orientation is? Here's the people that came before you that had your job. Here's why they got fired. you're up next. Don't make their mistakes. The reason the first half of Al-Baqarah is highlighting these chapters of the Israelites is because these are the exact mistakes that are most likely going to be repeated by the Muslims. So before Allah talks to us, He tells us about them. He tells us about them. And instead of focusing on the instructions that Allah has given that are so simple and so clear, if we start distracting ourselves with, oh, it's so difficult, there's so many schools of thought, I don't know where to put my hand, I keep trying to measure the size of my beard and I can't figure out which one I should go with, I don't know about, the texture of the hijab or this or that. The more you do this, you want to dive into the details, the color of the cow, the size of the cow, the more you want to do that, you know what's going to happen? You're going to continue to be culturally colonized while you're fighting over these minutia details. That's what's going to happen. It's time the Muslims liberate themselves mentally. Before we can liberate ourselves politically, economically, socially, psychologically, we need to liberate ourselves intellectually, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, internally. It is time. Look, guys, we're in a crazy time in the world. Nobody could have imagined 5 years ago, 2 years ago, nobody could have imagined that there are going to be, there's going to be a white girl, white teenager in Ohio crying on TikTok about what's happening in Gaza. Nobody could have imagined that. That was come on, what are you talking about? What universe are you talking about, right? The world has changed. What's remarkable about the world today, there's a new level of awareness, and that will never go back. There's a new level of awareness of political injustice. But you know what? Take that as a sign. If the world can wake up to something that was happening in front of their eyes, and they were blind to it for 70 years, and now they're waking up to it, well, you know what, Muslims, you have potential. You can wake up to what's in Allah's book. You can wake up to what Allah has given. I can wake up to it. It's time this ummah experienced an intellectual and a spiritual renaissance, and I believe this is the generation that's going to do it. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.